Bienvenue, welcome everyone to this session wherein we are going to discuss the recent changes in the exam format of TEF, TEF, Test d'évaluation de français, which is conducted by entity based in Paris, based in France. So we will discuss the changes have been made in two modules, that is listening and reading, expression, compréhension orale and compréhension écrite. The other exam, which is also valid for French proficiency for Canadian immigration, is TCF. There are no changes in TCF as at this moment, so these changes are only applicable in TEF. So that's the topic. So before we jump in there, did anybody give the exam recently? Like in last, these changes have only come into effect since December 10th. So December 10th was the first session when the exam was conducted on the new format. So has anybody given this exam on that format? I'm not sure, but just asking.
Not on the new format, Jim.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
So so that's a good that we have a couple of students who have given the exam on the old format. So we are going to talk about TEF, as I said previously mentioned, Test d'évaluation de français. The actual exam that you guys are interested in is called as TEF Canada, but the fundamentally the exam remains TEF, and TEF Canada only has 4 modules, which is listening, reading, writing and speaking. And TEF exam usually has 5 modules. There's one more module of grammar and lexical studies. So that is not applicable to TEF Canada. But apart from that, the exam is same. Exam is fundamentally TEF. TEF Canada is a variation wherein they don't have this grammar and lexic module. They just have these 4 modules. That's all. So that's the only difference between TEF and TEF Canada. Now, what they have done, effective 10th December, the first session that happened with this new format, is I'll summarize the changes first, like in a broad way, and then we will take a deep dive into the exact changes that they have made. The summary is that I don't know if you guys had seen my video on the comparison of TEF versus TCF Canada. We have a video on that where we had compared the 2 exams. So if somebody remembers, can you guys tell me, let's compare listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So comparatively, which one was easier? Listening. Do you guys remember? Anybody recalls anything from that discussion? Nobody. You guys are very well informed. You don't even know there are 2 exams available for proving your French proficiency. And then we had done a very detailed comparison of module by module for these 2 exams. That video is available on YouTube, which we'll have to do it again because now that was based on the earlier format of TEF. Now we'll have to do it again. But anybody really? Listening, which one was easier, TEF or TCF? Comparatively.
Agree. TEF.
Yeah, so this one was comparatively. Okay, it's not like it doesn't require you to have level, but it was comparatively easier. Reading was also, I'm not sure. I think reading was, anybody remember reading? Yeah, speaking was TEF, definitely comparatively. Writing was TCF comparatively. Yeah, reading was equal. I remember reading was equally, like I would rather go more towards TEF, but it was not that much, but not by that much of a margin. So it was more towards TEF for reading. Writing, yes, TCF is comparatively easier, even though you have 3 tasks as compared to 2 in TEF. But the nature of task is that it's much easier. It's a bit easier, not much, bit easier in TCF, even though there are 3 tasks instead of 2 for writing. In fact, there's a historical evidence that we had certain students who found it very difficult to clear the writing section of TEF with CLB 7 score. There are certain individuals for whom writing is extremely difficult, like that becomes their Achilles heel. In those cases, they had actually attempted TCF writing and they were able to clear. So there is some historical evidence for writing. Speaking, TEF is a bit easier compared to TCF, again because TCF has 3 mini tasks, whereas TF only has 2. And TCF also involves a monologue, which is much more difficult to deliver as compared to a conversation with examiner. Okay? So that is the general comparison. Now that was based on the previous version of TEF. Now let's talk about what has happened. So what has happened, as I said, in Canada or TEF Canada, they have made changes in the reading and listening exam. Fine. So let's before we get into the nitty gritties or whatever, like the exact details of changes, let me just give you the summary. Summary is that in general, the difficulty level has increased, especially for listening. Reading hasn't changed a lot. I mean, difficulty level wise, but listening definitely has become a bit more tougher as compared to the previous version. And that pretty much what that has done, even reading has become a bit more difficult, slightly more. Listening definitely has become a bit more tougher. So what that has done essentially is that now pretty much like this is here, really, this is also firmly here, and yeah, speaking is a little bit here, and writing is pretty much a little bit here, right? So that essentially means that there's very little trade-off now between TEF and TCF. Speaking is slightly easier in TEF and writing is slightly easier in TCF. Apart from that, that's these two exams are now much more similar. In fact, for listening and writing, the exams are very similar in structure now. One of the key things for listening in TEF Canada was almost 40 to 40% questions, or 40 to 50% question, you could hear the audio twice. Now that has gone. In fact, that was not the case with TCF. TCF, you could only hear the audio only once for each question. That is the exact same mechanism with TEF Canada now. So that is a major difference from the previous version. And reading, although earlier we used to have 50 questions, and that created a bit of a problem. Earlier we used to have 50 questions to be solved in 1 hour time, and that was creating a slight issue for time management. Now they have reduced the questions to 40, just like TCF. Again, the two exams are extremely same now, extremely similar. Number of questions, duration, especially reading and listening, very similar now. So they have reduced the question from 50 to 40, and that might feel like, oh yeah, that's good then, right? They have reduced the number of questions. Yeah, but unfortunately the number of passages that you need to read have increased. So the hard work has increased even though the questions have decreased in number. So let's get into the exact details of changes now. And before we do that, do we have any questions based on the information that has been shared so far?
Was in the listening part, the images one, the first easy questions, 10, 11 questions, those are gone right now in the newer format. The match
Let's
the image.
no, don't worry about it. We are gonna do a full on deep dive on what exactly has changed, so you don't worry about it. Seems like you guys are still in shock, so let's get ahead. Yes, please, you can ask the question.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just took the exam on 15th in the Philippines, and the listening part was tremendously harder because there were two francophone Africans in the same room with me, and they said it was very difficult, and starting from I don't know, like the 21st question, I was totally lost.
So you gave the exam based on new format?
Yes, I took it on the 15th,
Okay,
last
15.
last Friday in the Philippines.
Okay.
But I found that the reading part is a little bit more. Uh, less difficult,
Yeah,
much easier. Yes.
yeah,
So that's just my experience, and I have to take it again.
yeah. No. I mean, that's precisely what I said also, that reading, okay, it has not changed a lot. I mean, it has changed, but difficulty level hasn't moved much. But listening, definitely, I took the test myself, like, and not in an official center, but on the PrepMyFuture, and I could feel that. Yeah, it has become a skill set requirement has changed now a little bit. It's not like the questions are more difficult than before, but the format itself is a bit more demanding now. It's just a skill sets that you require are different, and let's come to that. Let's get into details now. So reading, let's get into the reading part first, and then we'll tackle the listening. All right, so let's go with the reading. As I said, so the old format had 50 questions in 1 hour. Now it has new format has 40 questions. So in old format, one of the challenges was time management. That to finish all the 50 questions within 1 hour was a bit of a challenge. That challenge has been reduced a bit because the number of questions have reduced from 50 to 40. Having said that, the number of paragraphs have increased. So earlier in the early part of the exam, we had 6 to 9 paragraphs. I say 6 to 9 because six were definitely paragraphs and three were pretty small. So I don't know if we could consider them as paragraph. But okay, even then, let's say nine. So 9 paragraphs were there, and apart from that, the questions were of different type. Like we had some questions where they give you four, like I don't know, one, two, three, four, and they would ask you to arrange the sentences in an order to create a paragraph, correct paragraph, and the options were like 3, 2, 4, 1 or 1, 3, 2, 4 or something like that. So there were different kinds of questions. There were some questions with synonyms, like they will give you a sentence and they will give you options, and they will ask you which option is the closest to the given sentence, like the synonyms. So 5 questions were like that, and the 5 questions were like this, where you had to give the correct order of options to form a meaningful paragraph. Unfortunately, these all questions have dropped. So there are no questions of reordering and no questions of synonyms. So what has happened? So I think essentially these two questions have gone. So the 50 questions, out of the 50 questions that were there, 5 of synonyms and 5 of reordering are gone. So that automatically meant that there are 40 questions. Slightly tough news is that I would say that these were not all of not all 10 of them, but at least 5 of them were very easy. Out of these 10, 5 were very easy. So we have lost on 5 easy questions for sure here. I'll also actually open my PrepMyFuture Compréhension écrite. Okay. So the first 7 questions are like this. They are going to give you short documents, like images or documents, and you have to say what is it about, which is very similar to what it was in the earlier format also. So this is not much of a change. That continues till 7th. The length will increase a little bit, but apart from that, nothing much has changed in terms of this first part. So this is pretty okay. Earlier it used to be up to 10 questions. Now it has reduced to 7. So that's fine, but that's not hasn't changed much. So for people who are at the B2 level or slightly more level, should able to get 7 out of 7 in this. So that should not be an issue. Now from 8 to 13, this is where actually the new format has become a bit easier. From 8 to 13, what they're asking you is fill in the blank, like just one sentence, and you have to put in the missing word in the sentence. So this I found very easy. So it's pretty easy actually from 8 to 13. So this actually has become easier than before. I would say this part is easier than the previous one. Previous one actually you had to look at some small document, make some inference, but this is easy. I would say this is better for time management also, because you just have one sentence to read, 4 options with one word each, and fit in the correct option. So this is good. So far so good. Honestly, first 13 questions I would say for the new exam much easier than the first 13 questions of the old exam. So good, that's fine. From question 14 to question 17, the next 4 questions also fill in the blank, but now you have a paragraph. So it is a slightly more difficult than the previous 5. Still not that difficult, but and again the point is that the options remain small. The options remain one word, so that's a good news. Not a lot of energy will be gone in reading the options. So slightly difficult, but not that much. The only thing is that you have to now look at the context of the paragraph and fit in the correct word. But I think this should also be doable. So for me, honestly, First 17 questions of the new format are pretty good, and that is almost, we are talking about almost how much? 45% of the exam, because total questions are 40. So far, so good. This is the easy part. The first 17 questions of the new format is the easy part. Actually, it's earlier it used to be 15. First 15 used to be easy. Now they have become 17. So that's a good part. Any questions so far?
Yeah, so Kaustubh, so I just have a doubt. Like, will all the fill-ups be multiple choice so that option elimination can be exercised?
There's always multiple choice. In this exam, everything is multiple choice. Everything. Every question is a multiple choice. And there's only one correct answer. So that hasn't changed. So that's good. So that is a good part. So as I said, for till question number 17 from first, the exam actually has become a slightly easier or a bit easier. So that's good. Now, here goes the slightly problematic part. From 18 to 22, the questions have not changed in difficulty level a lot. You still have a small options of one word. You can see 18, 19. It's you just have to make the correct choice. Which choice is correct? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, course 1, course 2, or email number 1, email number 2, or hotel number 1, hotel number 2. So the options are still very precise. That's good. The only problem is that now you have to read much more. You have to read a lot more content to come to one answer. If you can see, there are, I don't know, like three, these are not full lines, but there's 3 4 lines in every, 3 lines on an average on every option. So slightly more reading is concerned, but nothing too much to worry about. Good news is that it's still deduction. You are still deducing, and the answers are not confusing. Good news is about this format is that the options are pretty straightforward. They are not confusing. One of the characteristics of old format was that sometimes they would make the options very confusing. So you wouldn't know which option is the correct one because this were very similar. Now there's no situation like that. So that's a good news. So till question number 22, options are extremely easy. Options are not confusing. So that is almost more than 50% of the exam. So slightly reading increases here. Then comes the slightly not so desirable part. And I would say for the students now, what happens is that you have 1 hour to give the exam. My advice to you would be the first 22 questions, you should try to do them in 20 or maximum 22 minutes. First 22 questions, 20 to 22 minutes maximum. If you can do them in less than that, très bien. With practice, maybe you can. So no more than 20 minutes for the first 22 questions because they're easy and the options are not difficult to understand and options are mostly one word and they are very precise. So that's good news. What has happened unfortunately after that is that why I'm saying you should not spend more than 20 minutes is that now for the next 18 questions you're almost going to read for, how many are this, 9 paragraphs. So we're going to read 9 paragraphs, although the paragraphs are going to be very small. For the first 3 paragraphs, the paragraphs are going to be pretty small. I can show you the paragraphs, how they look like. So let's go to question number 23. And the first paragraph looks like, okay, not a lot. And the first 2 questions, the second paragraph, okay, still not bad. So first 2 are pretty decent. And then it starts getting a bit heavier and a bit bigger. From the third paragraph, third is also manageable, I would say. And then it starts getting a bit difficult. The vocabulary starts getting a bit tricky, and the length also is a bit more. And then they just, from that moment onwards, they just flat out start, length is also increased and the difficulty level of comprehension is also increased, which was a similar case in your earlier format also. The paragraphs would start becoming bigger and more and more difficult as you progressed, and there were about 6 to 9 paragraphs in that also. Now also you have 9 of this, you have 9 of this paragraph, 5 uh, till question 32, and then 4 big ones. So not much has changed, except that I think there's slightly more reading to be done, especially considering the fact that the 4 questions before this question number 18 to 22 were also based on a slot of paragraphs only. Like there were choices, but all four were small paragraphs only. So if you can say these are also four paragraphs, then effectively it becomes 4 and 5, 9 and 4, 13 paragraphs. So number of paragraphs have increased as compared to 6 to 9 last time. Now they are almost, how do you say, 13. But good news is that the number of questions have reduced, so the time management should not be a problem. So I do not think that reading test has changed the difficulty level too much. Time management challenges have been reduced a little bit because number of questions are less, but at the same time you have more content to read, so that has been compensated by that. So I think pretty much, to be honest, in general, and now what will happen is that more and more people will give the exam. Like right now we have one student who has given the exam, but as more students give the exam, we'll collect more data. But based on my information or my impression so far, I would say reading test hasn't moved a lot. Its difficulty level hasn't increased here or there, but only thing is that you will need more patience because there are more, potentially more paragraphs to read than before. Earlier you had this kind of easy, how do you say, not easy questions, but questions which did not need paragraphs, like reordering of or like ordering of sentences to create a paragraph, or the second one was the synonyms. So that has reduced a little bit, but yeah. So that's pretty much the reading changes. What are your impressions so far?
Hi, so Monalisa here. I think even if they are, the format has changed, probably if the difficulty level has reduced, it's still okay because with practice, we can learn to read faster and, have more accurate answers, and that would only improve the score. So I
Yeah,
think it's still positive and not nothing to be scared of.
that's a good one. I would agree with that. It's at least for the first 22 questions. What is my biggest takeaway is that for first 22 questions, the options are really simple. When I say options are simple, meaning to read, there's maximum one or, like, it's, they're not big, one word, two words. So that's very good, because many times if the options are too long, it takes a lot of effort to reduce the difference between options and everything. So it's very important that you read the options correctly. And since till question number 22, options seem to be very, how do you say, distinct and easy to make out the difference. So that's a good news. The only slightly worry for me is that a bit more content to read than before, even though number of questions have reduced. So that's a other factor. Any other closing remarks? Any questions on reading test changes? Even your impressions or opinions is okay. Or if you want any questions like suggestions, as I said, my biggest
Yes.
suggestion would be for the first 22 questions, finish them in 20 minutes so that you leave yourself with enough time, 40 minutes, to read the paragraphs, and then give yourself the best chance. Out of next 18, if you get even 12 correct, you are have a very good chance of getting CLB 7. So I would say in the first 22 get 20 correct, so there's less margin for error, and in the next 18 get 12 correct. So by that way you will get 32 out of 40 correct, and that should be pretty much nailed on CLB 7. Yeah, go on. Any questions? Yeah.
Hi, Kaustav. How many questions do we have to get correct for like getting a CLB score of 7?
That information is not public, so they do not publish this information. So even in the last previous format of the exam, the information was not public. um,
Okay.
so what we did was, based on my attempts, like when I gave the exam and when other students give the exam, we took a historical data, and then we gave some estimate. Like there were 50 questions last time, so we used to say 38 plus. If you get 38 plus correct, that's roughly CLB 7. Now again, this data, we don't have a lot of data right now because only one student has given. No, not all questions have the equal weightage. No, no, no. Simply because um, all questions do not have the same difficulty level. So it is not possible that they have same weightage. Some questions are of A1 level, some questions of A2, so on and so forth. So not, definitely not all questions have same weightage. In fact, Aishwarya, if you can share with with me the link where they have changed the marking scheme. So I'll show you the proof for that, why we are saying that every question has not got the same weightage. Even though earlier it was pretty linear, so what used to happen till 10th December 2023 was that for all the four sections, speaking, writing, listening, and reading, the classification of points was like this: from 0 to 299, less than CLB 4, then 300 to 349, CLB 4, then 350. So that was same for all four sections. Now, because they have done this rejig of number of questions and everything in the reading and listening, they have changed it for reading and listening. Reading and listening is now like this, and for writing and speaking, it's like this. So they have pretty much like rejig the whole thing. Earlier it was like it was different. Now it's different. So again, if you see the, how do you say, this was statistics, right? The intervals. If you see the intervals, they're not linear. Like they're not. You cannot divide the number of questions. Even you cannot divide 699 by 40 or 50 or something like that. So definitely one thing is for sure, not all questions have same difficulty level, and definitely not every question carries the same weightage in terms of marks. That's for sure. The only problem is they do not explicitly publish how many points each question has, so you don't have that exact picture. But then again, I say it's okay, you can live without that. Students have lived without it for last few years. So you need to get, I would say, out of 50, you need to get how much we're saying 20, and out of 40 questions, now you have 40 questions in reading, you need to get at least 20, 32, 30 or 32 correct, and that should be that. Any questions on this part?
Kaustubh, could you suggest any material to practice from? Because we had, for the older format, we had a lot of material freely available, or but for the newer format, specifically for these two parts.
Yeah, right now our only option is the PrepMyFuture, which is the official
Yeah.
site by the exam institute that conducts the exam. As it's obvious that because the exam has been happening just 1 week now, the new format, so there will not be a lot of material on internet. Also, if you guys have observed, earlier few months ago or till last couple of years, there used to some, I don't know, people used to have repetition of questions sometimes, especially in reading. So there was some documents available on internet where if you study all those 100 paragraphs, it was likely that some of them will repeat in your exam. That has stopped. That got stopped even a few months before the format change. I think if you PrepMyFuture has so much of it, like there's so many exercises apart from the themselves. Like, but yeah, they have clearly marked the ancien format, so you can just ignore that, and you can just focus on the something that is marked with 2023. So that's good. But this is pretty much it. And as more and more exams are conducted, I'm pretty sure that Nitish, they will have more dumps available on it. Any other question before we move on to listening part?
Hi. So related to his question, I actually wanted to know how many test papers does this Prep My Future module have?
So if you go to the test part, okay. So for the new version, you get one, two, yeah, even what is the TEF AQ? It also has yeah, it also has four. Okay. So let me go back to tests. So you'll have one full, two full, three full, three full exams based on new format, and one mini test. I don't know what that is. I think there are less questions in mini test. So let me just open it. Yeah, it's still new format, but less number of questions. So let's say three and a half for reading and listening.
Okay, thanks. But is that TEFAC not for Quebec?
No. So exam is still same. How many times I have told you guys? Exam is still TEF. The base exam remains TEF. They have variations of Canada and just TEF, and only thing is some modules are here or there, but that's it. Number of modules change, but the exam doesn't change.
Okay, thank you.